Hey, how's it going, Brandon? We're back here with another video, and this video today we're going to be going over the deck profile of Reshiram and Charizard-GX, and it's going to be using the Green's Exploration engine. So you can see with Green's Exploration, you can only play this card if you have no Pokemon with abilities in play, and as you can see with the only two Pokemon that this deck plays, there are 0 abilities in this deck, so you can use greens to freely search for whatever cards you like in general. So I know based off of our sessions, you started to test this deck in the new Cosmic Eclipse format, so this video might be a little insightful for you to learn a little bit more about that deck, and I hope that it will help you on your Pokemon journey to become a much better player. As always, we will be going over the thought process of what Green's Reshiram Charizard is, so you can understand it as a deck, and then I'll be giving some helpful hints on how your Pikachu and Zekrom-GX deck, your exact deck, can combat this deck if you were to face across it. So not necessarily do you need to look at this video for just what it is. You could also see exactly how your Pikachu deck will do against this deck. And you can also ask me any question that you have during our next coaching session, or you could ask your brother Ryan. I'm sure he knows a lot about Pokemon as well. He's learned a lot and he's grown a lot as a player in this game. So I'm sure we would both be able to help you with any questions you have. Let's jump into this video. So as I said, the main attacker of this deck is Reshiram Charizard-GX, 270 HP beast of a Pokemon, and it has 3 attacks. Outrage, if you have a lot of damage counters on you, Outrage can do a decent bit of damage. Count how many damage counters you have, and that's how much extra you're going to do, plus an additional base damage 30. Flare Strike, you can power it up quickly with a super powerful supporter card, Welder, that can attach up to 2 fire energies from your hand. And you also have Double Blaze GX, which you can go between 3 to 6 energies to do 200 to 300 damage, and going through any effects as well. So we got a really powerful and versatile attacker here, and we basically powered up by manually attaching energies, using Welder, and you could search out Welder with your Green's Exploration. Remember, those are both supporter cards, so you can only play 1 supporter card a turn. And Greens you can play at any time because you will have no Pokemon in play with abilities. You could also power it up with Volcanian's Flare Starter. So search your deck for a fire energy card and attach to one of your Pokemon. And if you go second and it's your first turn, so only on your first turn of the game, and if you went second, you could power up 3 energies and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. So this is a great way to power up the Pokemon. Now I know a lot of players with this deck, they struggle on if they should go first or if they should go second. My personal belief is that you should try to go first with this deck, unless you know you're playing against Mirror Match, because it does give you a chance to attach an energy to your Reshiram Charizard-GX, or to use Welder first, which is typically the better strategy with this deck. If you somehow go second, that's when you want to start with Volcanion. The only reason why it's not better to go second, and keyword is not, is because you won't always be able to start with a Volcanion, and if you look through this list, you actually have 0 ways to search out Volcanion on your first turn. So not only do you have to start with a Volcanion, you have to have a Volcanion, a Reshiram Charizard, and a Fire Energy, and you basically need to have a supporter to have a very good start. That's why it's better to go first to get your deck, giving yourself more opportunities to play the game. High Heat Blast, since this is a single prize card Pokemon, it's great at knocking out your opponent's Pokemon that have 110 HP or less. We don't have any way to power up this Pokemon at all in this deck. The only way that you can modify damage counters would be with something like the single Shrine of Punishment that this deck has. So between turns, you can put 1 damage counter on each of your GX and EX, on every GX and EX in play. Now, considering the EX Pokemon are rotated, read it as if it's only GX Pokemon in play. You do have to be careful about your Reshiram and Charizard-GX, because you have to be careful because this is a GX Pokemon and it would take damage from your own Shrine of Punishment. So be careful when you're playing this card. Shrine of Punishment is basically meant to attack a Pikachu Zekrom, a Pokemon that has 240 HP, when you attack with Flare Strike. So 230 plus 10 equals 240, which knocks out a Pikachu. There's a couple other Pokemon that it can knock out as well, but just keep that in mind when it comes to attacking with your Pokemon. Moving on to the items, trainer, supporter, stadiums, Pokemon tools section. We have Acrobike. Acrobike's a great way to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, and you could put one of them in your hand and you discard the other card. Considering you only play 8 supporter cards and you need to be searching out Pokemon such as ReshiZard and Volcanion. You want to make sure that you can get them out. Acrobike allows you to thin through your deck and draw more cards. Cherish Ball is a simple way for a Green's Exploration to grab a Reshiram and Charizard-GX, so you can either power it up with a Flare Starter, or maybe you just need one out in general to power up with a Welder. Custom Catcher in this deck, it's the same card that you play in your Pikachu and Zekrom-GX deck. You may play 2 Custom Catchers at once, so this is a great way to use Green's Exploration. You could search out 1 or 2 copies if you have any in your hand, depending on what you want to do, and you could bring up your opponent's Pokemon to attack them with some of your big attacks such as Flare Strike and Double Blaze. Or even if your Reshiram and Charizard-GX is damaged, they can attack with Outrage to do a little bit of damage there. Energy Spinner is a great way to search for some basic energies, and this deck also plays a Fiery Flint, which is another great way to search out fire energies off of a Green's Exploration. Sometimes you'll need to grab a Cherish Ball, and you'll want to grab an Energy Spinner or a Fiery Flint. Or maybe you need Fiery Flint to power up a Pokemon with Welder. This deck runs off of fire energies, and you need to have a lot of them to make sure that you can attack with these fairly expensive attacks. Next up, there's Fire Crystal, so they can nab back 3 fire energy cards from their discard pile to power up their Pokemon. Sometimes their Pokemon get knocked out, sometimes they're going to discard things with Fiery Flint or Acrobike. Fire Crystal is to make sure that they always have energies to use their attacks as necessary. There's 4 copies of Great Potion, so this is a great way to heal your active GX Pokemon. So this is definitely a deck, if you're facing against it with your Pikachu Zekrom deck, you want to try to be taking knockouts on their Pokemon. And the reason why is because they can use Great Potion and heal that damage away very quickly. They can quickly grab Green's Exploration, grab 2 Great Potions, and heal 100 damage from their Reshiram and Charizard-GX. Next up, there is Pokegear. Pokegear, look at the top 7 cards of your deck. You can reveal a supporter card. This is just to make the deck a little bit more consistent so they can grab Greens or Welder, just so they can always have a supporter. Reset Stamp, they're basically only going to play this card. Like Reset Stamp, it's a super common card nowadays. And your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws a card for each of the remaining prize cards. So if they knocked out a Reshiram, Charizard, and a Volcanion, for example, your opponent would be drawing 2 cards off the Reset Stamp, and usually off of 2 cards, they will not have a lot of chances to get a supporter card, such as Greens or Welder. So Reset Stamp is a great way to disrupt your opponent. Switch, super simple card here. Switching the active with the bench. Sometimes there's going to be a Volcanion in the active, or maybe they want to hide behind a Volcanion with the Reshiram switching into there. That's why there's a couple copies, and they can grab all of these cards off of Green's Exploration. They actually can grab any item, supporter, stadium, Pokemon, tool, trainer card at all. Heat Factory is a great way to get fire energy in the discard pile for Fire Crystal, so you can get them back, and it's a great way to draw some cards for your opponent. You might want to bump this with one of your Lysander Labs or your Thunder Mountain Prism Star. And they do play a couple copies of Power Plant, 3 copies to be exact, that can stop your GX Pokemon, that will stop your Dedenne. It will stop your Zorora, and it will stop, what else do you got going on there for abilities? Zorora, Pikachu, or Zorora and Dedenne for the most part. It's going to stop. So be careful just to check to see if your opponent has one and has a Power Plant in play. If they do, be sure to bump it with a Lysander Labs or a Thunder Mountain Prism Star. Shrine of Punishment, like I said, they can go for that huge Flare Strike, 230, plus 10 damage. They're probably going to play it all at once, so there's not too much that you could do to prevent it. This would be a great matchup to attack with Raichu and Alolan Raichu. It could do 250 damage with the GX attack, and then with an Electro Power, it can knock out a Reshiram and Charizard-GX. I've already went over Greens, already went over Welder, jumping in a Stealthy Hood. This is a great way for their deck to kind of get around Ninetales, bringing up their Pokemon. This is really the main reason why they would play Stealthy Hood, or in some circumstances, Malamar. And then there is 11 copies of Fire Energy in this deck. Whoa, that's a lot of talking for this video. So that's basically how this deck works out. It's one of those things where this deck is kind of consistent, kind of inconsistent. It's one of those middle tier decks. So it's going to do the same thing, just Flare Strike, Outrage, Double Blaze, Flare Starter, High Heat Blast, only 5 attacks available to the entire deck. So it's very predictable. The biggest thing you got to watch out for is Power Plant and Reset Stamp, or even Shrine of Punishment and Flare Strike. Make sure you knock out their Pokemon fully so that they can't Great Potion it away, and they can always custom catcher up your Pokemon to gain some quick prize cards. So be careful of that as well. It's more of just understanding what this deck can offer and then playing playing towards those strategies that I just said. So we will be playing this matchup next. I'm going to be playing against this exact list with your exact Pikachu and Zekrom-GX deck. Even though the arts might look a little bit different, it is the exact same deck. So stay tuned for that video, and we will jump into that one. All right, Brandon, thank you for watching, and keep on watching these videos. All right, bye.